Ladies and gentlemen, in the modern era of chess, when some of the best players in the world play beautiful games, where they launch devastating attacks on their opponents, they don't really shock many people. And what I mean by that is, you look at the engine, when you watch, you go, oh yeah, that's very clear. But sometimes chess moves are so incredible that an engine doesn't catch up to a human. It's rare, but it does happen. So the setting for this game is in St. Louis. They are playing the Chess 960 Champion Showdown. Our players involved are Wesley and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, number one player from France, and number two from the United States behind Fabiano Caruana. So 9LX, as they call it, Chess 960, has a different starting back row of pieces. The king must be between the rooks so that you have the ability to castle in those areas when those squares become available. Bishops need to be on opposite color, and that's basically it. Other than that, you can shuffle the pieces as you wish. So Wesley begins with b4. b4 is a decent move, and essentially in positions like this, it's very clear that you are not going to be castling that way, because you would need to clear a lot of pieces. So Wesley begins with b4, he commits a queenside pawn, and MVL responds with pawn to d6. The question is, how will he develop his bishops? He does need to fight for the center in some capacity, and now we have c4. So taking some queenside space, the queen has been opened up, that's always very nice. And now, well, of course, we have pawn to e5, looking to fight in the center, but again, if a move like b6 is possible, you can open up your queen also, but white now takes a commanding lead in the center, and really a lot of things apply as they would in regular chess. Like, for example, that's a very strong central grip. It prevents the easy development of this, and of the queen. And if you play e6, you can already start creating very big weaknesses in your position. So the players play e5, and here Wesley plays kind of a Scandinavian style move, d4. And if you don't know what Scandinavian means, it means you trade your d pawn for the e pawn, and then your opponent actually gets a free developmental tempo on your queen, and queen back to b2. But this transformation is actually better for white, because black's queen is now completely banished from the game. I mean, if it tries to get back with b6 at any good moment, white can even put a bishop on f3 and target it. And even moves like this become possible, where you just take away your opponent's forward movement. Like, if your opponent tries to trudge the knights into the center, you just control them. You just don't let them come forward in any way. The bishop will fight on the diagonal on this awkward queen in the corner. Very nice position. So interesting that Wesley commits the queen first to get MVL to commit the knight, and then he brings the queen back. Now this knight could be a target. So we have knight to e6. That's exactly what happens in the game. Obviously, you can't play f4 now. So you have a lot of ways to develop here. First of all, you can join up the bishop with the queen on this diagonal. That looks very nice. Of course, then black would castle, but you would have a very strong battery there. Or you can play knight to e3. Now, look, for example, it matters what pawn you throw into the center, because I said that pawn, but this pawn doesn't fight against anything. The knights still control the dark squares, and like very quickly, black can play bishop to f6. You move your queen, all of a sudden the knight jumps into d4. How on earth are you getting rid of this? Right, because you've overcommitted your pawns. So Chess 960 is very interesting. I mean, everything is all over the place. So Wesley plays the move knight to e3. MVL responds with bishop g5. Now, bishop g5 is a very direct idea. The idea here is that, for example, if you just continue like normal, I'm gonna take. Like, I'm going to just completely damage your structure. I mean, this is the ugliest thing ever. And then the way black is gonna activate the queen is very deceptive. Black is gonna throw the a pawn forward, and then black is gonna put the queen like a laser beam to that weakness. So in this format, things come at you from different angles, and it really tests your ability to see the entire board and create concrete plans in a very efficient manner of time, because these players only get about half an hour. All right, you can't spend like 90 minutes. I believe they get about 25 minutes. So, of course, Wesley's not going to allow that. Now, you would think bishop d2. That's just a very nice and sturdy move. But, by the way, the engine still likes this trade for black. The engine really likes this trade for black, and it thinks that black can still try to create some counterplay. My engine doesn't go to high enough depth, but if you don't even make that trade, well, then this bishop will just stand here forever. So then black will castle, and then this bishop will just stand unopposed. If you try to play a move like h4, because you are defended, I can just hang out on this diagonal, or I can take. So this is where Wesley begins his sequence of very brilliant moves with the intention of being featured in a YouTube video, either from myself or obviously Antonio's. So now knight to d5. Now, to the untrained eye, that just straight up looks like a blunder of a rook. And if Wesley was a participant in the Guess the Elo episode, I would understand that he straight up just hung this. But he gets so much for the investment of that rook. I like to call that relative value. This bishop is a 3.5 point bishop. This bishop's like a 2.7. All right, this bishop's a beast. This rook, I don't know. I mean, when you get rid of this, you got to understand your dark squares become real juicy. And when I play bishop to c3 to target your king, because that's where I assume you're going to be castling, you're not going to feel the loss of the rook as much as you will feel the loss of the dark squared bishop. So castles. Wesley has a couple of moves. First of all, he can just castle right back. And, you know, he can't go that way, obviously, with this rook, because this rook only belongs to that side castle, just like regular chess. He can play bishop to c3. He can attack with b5. That's also a very decent idea. And that's exactly what he does. He plays b5, attacking the knight on c6. And the knight will either jump to the middle or jump to the middle like this. If the knight retreats, that is another option, but extremely passive. Knight to e5, sorry, knight to d4 isn't great because you can just get chased around. But you can hang out here. And like I said, if you overcommit the pawns the wrong way, you'll never get rid of my knight. I'm going to play c5, and if you're wondering, Levy, there's a fork here. Yes, I understand there is a fork here, but then the players have sacrificed the exact same rook. c8, c1 rook just had to be sacrificed for the greater good. Not a big deal, because MVL would be giving back the material that he was granted anyway. But MVL goes back. And MVL went back with, obviously, the point that he will give up the rook. And, you know, Wesley is slightly better here. He has what's known as the bishop pair. He will put the bishop opposite the king and maybe try to play h4, h5, h6. But Wesley didn't want to win back the material, so what is he going to do? Well, he can also just go with the h-pawn, or he can line the bishop up. He can line up either of the bishops to go attack the king. Or Wesley can play the most gangster move I've seen in like the last 6 months. I don't know, it's a very arbitrary number. I just had to hype it up. Wesley plays something that Stockfish on chess.com's browser does not see at depth 30 plus. I left it running for some time. Lead Chess's Stockfish 14 did not see it either until depth 29. All right, and then I don't know. I didn't look beyond that because I was getting bored and I needed to make the YouTube video. The engine doesn't see this move. Do you know what the move is? The move is knight to f6 check. Which, again, straight up looks like Wesley's trying to submit a game for Guess the Elo. It looks so ridiculous. This was the commentary team's reaction when they saw this. All right, take a look.
I think you just have to go f6, put the bishop on a good diagonal, and
Whoa! What? No,
Whoa.
no, that's
that has to be a board error, right?
Yeah,
There's no way that works. No, okay, well, it has to be 97. There's just what?
So there you go. They didn't believe it either. I like the preposterous like pan to the camera, and there's just a knight on f6. By the way, St. Louis Chess Club, don't copyright strike me. Biggest chess YouTube over here. I got you. That's St. Louis Chess Club. That's from their broadcast. Shout out to Maurice. Shout out to Alejandro Ramirez. Don't do that. Don't do it. All right, there. I plugged it. Plugged y'all. Y'all good? Hey, we're all friendly here. Knight to f6. So ludicrous. The engine doesn't. And then when you put this on the board, the engine's like, oh, yes, of course I saw this. Now, if you play king h8, then you're gonna have to take this at some point, because I'm gonna go and try to checkmate you. You're gonna have to take. Wesley realizes that the coordination of black's position is so miserable, he can just give him a full knight. And put his queen right here. He has two ideas. Idea number one, bishop c3, bishop f6, or queen f6, queen h8 mate. Just killing him on the dark squares. Idea 2, bishop c2. Idea 3, h4, rook h3, rook g3. He has 3 ideas. Black's position is so garbage, he can't defend against all of them. There's nothing that he can do. In fact, he only has one move right now that doesn't lose on the spot, and it's f5. And it's f5 because now white has to be a little bit careful. If white plays the move bishop c3 with the idea to play queen f6, black plays f6. And now you can't take with the bishop because you have no threat. You have no threat. You literally threaten nothing. It's all covered. I kick you out, and then I go, remember that horsey you gave me? Well, now I have 2 of them, and they are going to hunt your dreams. Used to be clowns, now it's horses. Okay, so you can't do that, so what do? Well, you play the only attacking move. The only move, actually. You don't do this, you don't do this, you don't go to that. You actually play queen to f6. You just play queen f6. And there's nothing black can do. Black can't move anything. Black can't play f6 anymore. So MVL plays the only move that doesn't lose again, knight g7, because he needs to block the diagonal. Wesley comes here, now the knight guards. Now everything's protected. Now, if you go back to bishop c2, too slow, because even if you get this, like for example, what black will do now is play this. This is how insane the defense is here for black. Look at this. If you play bishop c2 here, black needs to guard the knight on g7. Who's going to do that? Who of these pieces is closest to logically protecting the knight on g7? Besides this knight. You would play c6, bishop f5, rook c7, bishop e6, fe6. That is crazy. That degree of board vision is unbelievable. But that's what MVL was trying to set up. He was trying to do that. All right, that's why he found his defense, c6, rook c7. By the skin of his teeth, he survives. So Wesley has to, again, flip plans. Which plan is best? h4. Why is h4 best? Because if black just plays c6, you play rook h3, rook g3. Black's not fast enough. Actually, probably both of these plans work. Because I'm not going for this knight. So you haven't opened up the defense. So c6 just does not work. I push forward, you're going to be in big trouble. So now, after h4, black apparently is just busted. At this point, the engine's like, well, of course, I saw it the whole time. You can't tell me anything, puny human. It's plus 2.5, I'll have you know, even if it's minus 3. Actually, it's plus 5 material. Like, black is up 5 points of material, but it's plus 3 on the evaluation, which means that it's plus 8. Because even though it's plus 3, but you're down 5 points, are all the numbers confusing you? Okay, let's just get back to the game. The only move here that apparently delays is h5. The only meaningful move, rook to h3, trying to go here. Black can like throw an f4. Now you can't go here. And then black, now white just plays e3. Just very simple, e3. And there's nothing. You can't do anything. I'm taking and I'm going here and you're going to resign. So MVL plays bishop takes b5. Bishop takes b5 is a very interesting idea. So the idea is that it looks like you can just take. But if you take, then black is going to get a little bit of counterplay. He's going to play c6, and then he's going to sack the rook for the bishop. That was the idea. So now Wesley's got to be precise. He ignores the bishop. He continues trudging forward, and black plays rook c8. What's the point? What's the point if you push everything? Oh, his pieces did a little cha-cha slide. Bishop b5, boop, boop, like, voop, voop, you know? Like 2048, slide it all over to the right side, because you gotta trade the queen. Now, Wesley has to convert this. He can take, or he can take. And I would love to tell you that Wesley converted this at the top engine move the whole way. Not quite, but I gotta show you the full game. I can't just pause the video at, oh, look at this gangster sacrifice, bye-bye, he won. No, Wesley's still a human being. Apparently, c takes b5 just wins, because after this trade, the knight is just trapped. Wesley must have seen something else. He took on g7 right away. But after the queen trade and a new queen in between move check, when all the dust settles, white is a piece up, but black actually has a lot of pawns. Black has 7 pawns versus 4. So even though white is winning this position and he tries to get the knight out and get the rook out and pressure, black is not dead. Like, not by any stretch of the imagination. I put 2 1500s here, I bet black wins more than white, because in the endgame, pawn's gonna fly all over the place. But obviously the players that have the intermediate boot camp, link is in the description, will know how to handle practical endgames, but that's neither here nor there. So bishop d8, c5, and now we trade the bishop, and we jump our knight into the middle. Still, the position is practically very, very difficult. You gotta constantly worry about your king getting hunted down, and in the endgame, all these pawns are now blockaded. So knight g6, rook h3, and MVL wins himself another pawn, but rook e3 is a very, very tricky move. This has the opportunity to pose a very practical problem to black's position, that you might lose this pawn, and then you might lose every other pawn, and that's not very pleasant. But the engine's not afraid. It wants to go for the rook trade. The problem is that MVL doesn't, and he allows Wesley's pieces to coordinate in very, very, very nice fashion. The king is hunted out over here. The pawns are going to get the king, and the knight's going to take on f5. We have f4. Knight goes to c4 rather than hunting the king down, because rook is hit, pawn is hit. And, well, it definitely doesn't help that you just basically can't move at all, right? You're just totally stranded in. MVL could have defended a little bit better here by apparently just bringing his king out, but it's always in serious trouble. And the game ends with knight e3. And knight f5 is mate. So the only move here would be this, and yeah, MVL's not going to play on down a rook. He is a grandmaster. They do resign, unlike some of my other videos. So, a move that shook the engines and the commentators to the core, knight to f6, puff your chest out, Wesley. So, I love seeing stuff like this. Like, moves that machines just don't understand in the modern era are so rare. Like, so, knight f6 and a slow death. A slow death. And it was quite slow with this queen trade, but Wesley could have finished it in style here with cb5. The biggest difference being black is going to lose material and not get enough pawns for it, be super passive, and the knight has to stay constantly guarding the king. But 36 moves or 18 moves, what's the difference? Except one is 18 moves longer, and you have the potential to screw everything up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it inspires you to go play some games and go play some moves that engines will not understand, for better or for worse. As always, take care. See you in the next video. Peace out. Get out of here.